Do you know there is a capital in the world that was made for millions of people but is empty now? Do you know there is a road that was built at a cost of $1.3 billion, but locals don't like to travel on it? Let's now dive into the most useless megaprojects in the world. 5. Interstate H3 Kawaii. Let's start with a breathtaking scenic highway in the Aloha State, Hawaii. The 26-kilometer-long Interstate H3 passes through one of the most stunning landscapes in the world. It is so stunning that there were genuine concerns of motorists stopping and creating traffic hazards. However, the highway is as controversial as it is beautiful. It was first proposed in 1960 with defense considerations in mind, as the highway would connect the Pearl Harbor Naval Base on the south side to the Marine Corps Air Station on the east coast. The announcement of its construction was immediately met with resistance from environmental groups as well as Native Hawaiians, who are worried about the massive urbanization the project would bring. Environmental laws of the time and a change of route to protect surrounding valleys delayed the plans indefinitely. 26 years later, the environmental hurdles were removed when the Congress exempted the project from environmental laws and cleared the way for construction to finally begin in 1989. The highway was finally opened in 1997, almost 37 years after it was originally proposed. Interstate H3 is often considered an engineering marvel because of the difficult terrain it is built on and the advanced technologies used in its construction. In addition, the numerous high-tech tunnels, the highway runs almost exclusively over viaducts to protect the local environment in the valley below. Decades of decay, route changes, and newer but more expensive technologies meant that it was completed 5 times over the original estimated budget. The total cost of construction was $1.3 billion, which is about $50 million per kilometer, the most expensive cost per kilometer in the world. 4. Ciudad Real Central Airport, Spain. Spain is one of the prime travel destinations in Europe, and that was a key consideration when the idea of the Ciudad Real Central Airport was conceived. It was tipped to be the go-to destination for holiday travelers within Spain, as well as international visitors. The vision for this new airport was to make it an alternative to the already heavily overcrowded main airport in Madrid. The new airport had one of the top 5 longest runways in Europe and can serve 2 million passengers a year. That's a relatively low number compared to Madrid's 70 million passenger capacity. However, expansion plans were already in motion to boost the capacity up to 10 million annually. So when it finally became operational in 2009, the $1.3 billion expense might have seemed justified. However, all these plans came to a grinding halt in 2012 when the company behind the project filed for bankruptcy. The problems began with the location of the project. While it was called the Central Airport, it wasn't central in any way, as it was located 200 kilometers away from Madrid, with no major airlines to attract passengers. The airport had accumulated a $350 million debt by 2012. Unsurprisingly, it went into receivership and was put up for auction in 2013. The airport was even popularized as an abandoned location by the hit British TV show Top Gear in 2014. 3. Napier, Myanmar. Third on the list of the most useless projects in the world isn't just a remote airport. It's the capital of Myanmar, a new capital that was built from scratch. Myanmar former military leadership started building a new capital in secret in 2002. The shifting of a country's capital isn't unheard of, as many countries, including Brazil, Egypt, and Pakistan, have done so in the past. Islamabad, being the capital of Islamabad, had the most scenic views. Click to see the best places to visit in Islamabad. In November 2005, Myanmar's leader announced his decision to the public, but he kept the name of the new capital a secret. It was 4 months later when he finally revealed the name Napier, which literally means the king's resident. The reason for this sudden shift of capital wasn't clear. Some speculated that the military leadership was fearful of an attack from the sea, while others thought it was shifted on the advice of astrologers. However, a lot of it had to do with the former capital, Yangon, which is home to 7 million people, and the city is said to have reached its infrastructural limits, and its population is set to double by 2050. A lingering gap in health facilities, lack of quality educational institutes, and economic opportunities means that most of the population is reluctant to make the city a permanent home. So the city often paints the picture of a deserted place and is often referred to as a ghost town. The incredible 20-lane highway is practically empty. Traffic congestion is unheard of, and at times, a single automobile is caught drifting along the tremendous road. It may have a future, but to date, it is one of the most useless megaprojects in the world. 2. Forest City, Malaysia. We talked of an apparent ghost city, and next on our list is a green futuristic smart city that would rise from reclaimed land on 4 artificial islands and will be built around the artificial forest ecosystem. Forest City's location makes it an appealing bet for investors who are aiming to profit from its proximity to the independent city-state of Singapore. Singapore has the world's second busiest port and a thriving economy. The developers have already linked Forest City with Singapore through the Second Link Bridge, shortening the distance between the cities to just 20 minutes. Forest City will also have its own custom facility, enabling residents to move freely to Singapore and back. The design is advertised to incorporate many green innovations. Forest City will feature buildings with green rooftops and vertical gardens, providing a jungle experience. City streets will have a multi-layer design with the lower layer for traffic and parking spaces, while the upper layer will feature parks, sports facilities, and transport hubs. The city will be powered exclusively with renewable energy and will be completed by 2035 at a cost of $100 billion. One of the 4 proposed islands is close to completion with 50 apartment buildings, golf courses, swimming pools, and beaches on board. However, it's not all smooth sailing for this highly ambitious project. A multitude of economic and political hurdles are already hindering its progress. The project is mainly being funded through China, and Chinese residents virtually had a free pass to the city in the first few years of its construction. As a consequence, wealthy Chinese investors who couldn't afford the soaring prices of apartments in their own country rushed to Forest City. By 2019, 80% of the property owners were Chinese. The native Malaysians simply can't afford to buy these apartments as property prices are set with only the Chinese market in mind. The influx of Chinese investors caused a public outcry with opponents of the project, calling it a new form of colonialism. So by the start of 2020, less than 500 people were actually living in the residential developments, which is not a lot considering that Forest City is designed for 700,000 people. 1. Yucca Mountain, Nevada. You can mount a nuclear waste repository. We'll conclude this list with a megaproject that was planned in view of a sensitive global issue. Nuclear waste isn't talked about as much as other environmental problems. However, if not stored properly, it can be deadlier than anything ever witnessed since the advent of civilization. As of now, nuclear waste is stored above ground near the power plants where it comes from. However, the scientific community agrees that the safest permanent disposal solution is to store this hazardous waste deep underground. In the 1980s, U.S. authorities set about finding a permanent solution to this growing waste problem. In 1987, Yucca Mountain in Nevada was identified as the best available option. It was close to the USA's most used nuclear testing site and was away from any population centers. The plan was to deposit the waste from all over the country in a tunnel complex about 300 meters under Yucca Mountain. In addition to the isolated locations, Yucca Mountain is made up of volcanic ash formed millions of years ago. It allows the Yucca Mountains to absorb any radioactive waste without crumbling and cracking. Yucca Mountain, it seemed like a great location for a repository on paper, but Nevada-ians were having none of it. The United States has over 100 operational and closed nuclear reactor sites in 34 states, but none of them were in Nevada. So the congressional representatives and the general public vigorously opposed the idea of being the only nuclear dumping site in the whole country. Furthermore, question marks were raised over the official hydrological and geological surveys of the Yucca Mountain. Opponents believed that the site was unsuitable for a repository as it runs the risk of contaminating a nearby water source. The water source flows into Amargosa Valley and is used by Native Americans who have lived in the area for centuries. Despite the opposition, the project won approval in 2002 and the Department of Energy resumed construction. However, Nevada's opposition only grew stronger. They contended that routine exposure during the transition will stigmatize Nevada as residents and affect tourism in the state. For the opposition, the only reason Nevada was getting the repository was because of its lower population and smaller representation in Congress. By the time Barack Obama took office, the whole project had become highly politicized. In 2010, the Obama administration deemed the project unworkable and stopped funding it. 3 years later, a federal court ordered its resumption again. But there has been little progress since the Biden administration has clearly stated that Yucca Mountain isn't a part of the country's plans anymore.